Hey guys, it's Izzy here, and today I'm going to be doing my July wrap-up, showing y'all all of the books that I have completed in the month of July. I've finished 10 books so far, and there is still over a week left in the month. So if you guys would like to know about other books I might read this month, be sure to subscribe to check out my blogs or follow my Goodreads or Storygraph, which are always linked down below in the description of my videos. Let's get into it. We're going to start with my most recent read, and that is My Government Means to Kill Me by Ursa. This is a debut novel by somebody who typically writes TV shows, but this time they wrote a book. He actually wrote some episodes of one of my favorite shows, which is Narcos on Netflix. But let's talk about our characters. We have our main character, Trey. He is very young. He's 17 when this story starts out. Yeah, this spans years and it's this short. So he is 17 years old and he is very naive. Moving to New York City from Indianapolis. New York City compared to Indiana, that is a huge culture change, especially in the mid to late 1980s. That was such a use of symbolism, as going to a new big city is like going into adulthood. Anything is possible. You could go any route that you want. Just love how the author did that. The major plot point in this to me was the rent strike, and everything went downhill after the rent strike, along with the character work of Trey, because at first he was a character you could really root for, and I'm fine with unlikable characters, but he was just so annoying after that, because he's like, I had a rent strike. I'm so cool. His character development just completely shifted after that, and I didn't like how it went. But this is a very diverse cast of characters, and I think all the side characters are developed very well. Definitely think the character work was good. It was not great just because of how the main character's arc went. The atmosphere, I love that we are in New York City as our character is. As he explores the city, we are exploring the city. You're really put into his shoes, and I think that's a great way to explore and learn about this city as our character is doing so, because New York City 30, 40 years ago is completely different than the New York City we have today. This book really shows how corrupt the government of New York City was. I cannot say if it is now, because I have no idea, but back then it was extremely corrupt, and just the grittiness of the city, it was very crime-ridden at this time, very dangerous, and you can definitely see that on the page. The writing, this is annotation worthy. I did not annotate it because I just did as a mood read over the weekend, since it is such a short book. There is a lot of wisdom on these pages. This is such an intelligent writing style by the prose, and I'm honestly shocked that it's a debut by how intelligent it was. And it wasn't like, you know, sometimes that can really take you out of a book because you're just like, this author is just trying to be pretentious, but no, that is not the case here at all. It's just like, oh, wow, that really makes you think, and I love when a book can do that. There are footnotes throughout this. I did think the footnotes could be a bit distracting. They really took me out of the story, so I wish they would have just had notes at the back of the book that you could refer to. So that's why I'd recommend doing this as an ebook, because with ebooks it is all in the back and you just have to click the number if you want to see what that is about, rather than having half the page or whatever, you know, have just a whole paragraph at the bottom. Sometimes it could be that big, and to me that is just very distracting and can take away the flow of the story, because I have to go see what this footnote means. But at the same time, if this book didn't have footnotes, I'd probably be so confused, and it would have made me dock a star off or whatnot. But it was very helpful. I just wish that it was formatted differently. As I talked about, the rent strike plot was the plot that it was very on the nose, and the name of the landlord really took me out of the story, because I was like, what? Whoa. And I kept thinking of somebody else. I'm not going to say who, because it was such a shock for me for this person to come into the story, and it totally makes sense, but still it was just very on the nose, and I felt like the author was just wanting to put anger in the pages about something else, but wanted to do it a bit indirectly, and maybe they didn't really succeed with that, for me anyway, because, you know, it's all subjective. And it really went a lot over my head. It's really just hard to talk about with that. I did learn a lot. There's a lot of politics involved in this. We are learning about the civil rights movement and the LGBT community, and I learned so much. It was so informative of that, and that was something I really enjoyed about this, is that I got to learn about how back then the people fought for their rights and how it has impacted us today. The forefathers, I wouldn't even say this is, I would say this is like the second generation of it, but it was so intriguing to learn about that and all that went into it, put everything into it really, these people, and I thought that was very moving, and it is great to see what people will do for something they believe in. So I did love this book. It was a 3.75, but I did have some critiques. Next we have a poetry collection, Beautiful Sad Eyes, Weary Waiting for Love by R.M. Drake and R.H. Sin. So there are 2 books in here. I really wish they would have just done a bind up of one, because on Goodreads it does count as one book and it says it's over 400 pages, but no. But you would think this would be 1 through 200 and then you would have 200 through 400. No, I had to manually add it all up, and I'm a literature person. I am not a math person. You know, I'm not going to dock stars off for that, but it's just kind of an annoyance and adding extra steps into it. Most people probably aren't doing Goodreads and Storygraph and all of that. But this one, it would be great for a young person, particularly in their late teens, early 20s, as you are finding yourself coming to terms with who you are. This could be so eye-opening. It's like the Barbie movie, how I'm like, that was great for somebody just getting into feminism, but somebody who's already aware, I'm like, yeah, it's fine, I already knew all this. And that's how I felt with this, is that there were some points where it's like, wow, we all go through the same thing. Like, this wasn't eye-opening to me because I already knew all of that. I already realized all of that. It was just reassuring to see it written on page and be like, wow, they got that point great. But then R.H. Sins came along, and that poet's sections were just so negative, and I hate negativity. I don't want to read it. It ruined my reading experience, and I gave this like a 2.75, I think. A nonfiction, you know, I want to add more nonfiction to my repertoire. Okay, so this is Diana, Her True Story by Andrew Morton. This is a biography all about Princess Diana, and I really loved getting to know her as a person rather than the Princess of Wales or this very influential woman. We really saw what made her into that person. I loved the parts of her childhood. That was my favorite part of this. I loved getting to see her childhood. I always just assumed her mental health issues were because of her marriage and because of the royal family, but no, it all stemmed back to her childhood, like so many other people. Her parents divorced, her stepmother not really caring for the kids, and just the family being all separated, whether it be boarding school or divorced parents and all of that. And that very much had a huge impact on Diana and her siblings. It was just like, wow, she really went through a lot. And I think it shows that you shouldn't judge somebody because what social class they come from, because we all go through the same stuff. When you're judging somebody, which you shouldn't judge anybody at all, but you shouldn't judge them for something like that, because one, you can't help what you're born into, so you know, that's one thing. Just loved getting to see her as a person. I will say this really painted her in a positive light. It really didn't go into any negatives, but if you are a very intuitive person, I think you will be able to spot some things here and there that might be a red flag. My complaints were the writing style. Just the way some sentences were formatted or structured were a bit confusing, and I would have to read several times to get a full understanding of what Andrew Morton was trying to say. Also, as an American, a lot of like the nobility and royal stuff went right over my head, and I'm just like, I don't really understand what he's talking about, but that's okay. It does hinder my reading experience, but that just means I need to educate myself more. But I love this, and again, give it like a 3.75. Our next one, I've been reading books based on my zodiac sign, which is my sun's sign is Leo, and that is what I focused on the past 2 weeks, is reading Leo books. And one of those was the Yonahlossee Writing Camp for Girls by Anton Disclefani. This is a historical fiction. We have our main character, Thea, who is coming of age. She is in her mid-teens, and I think this book did a great job at showing the awkwardness of coming of age, of your teenage years, going into womanhood. It's messy, and especially think of in the early 1930s, they did not have all the resources that we have now. Like, we could just Google something. I see posts on Reddit all the time of young girls asking questions about coming of age, being a woman. They did not have Reddit back in 1930. Things weren't as open as they are now. I cannot imagine what it must have been like being 15 in 1930. Oh my gosh, I thought it was hard being 15 in 2014, so I can't imagine nearly 100 years ago what it was like. And in this book, we talked about the one plot point with my government means to kill me. There's a plot point in here as well. I think we had two plot lines. We have one that is in Florida that is before she goes to this camp, and then we have her in North Carolina at the camp. And the before in Florida was definitely where the story flourished. A 180 on her character. It would make sense if this was set, if the timelines were set years apart, but they're set mere months apart. And I don't understand how this character changed so much. It was like she was a new, completely different character. In Florida, she's just a young girl, coming of age, as I said, going through those notions. But in North Carolina, she's very, like, manipulative. She is very, I don't want to use this word for that, but sultry, like, very sure of herself. She knows what she wants and gets what she wants. It was just completely different, and I don't understand it. So character work here was not great. Atmosphere, again, the Florida one was just so lush, and I loved it. I loved the descriptions of Florida. It went into the history of the state, therefore the history of her family, and I loved those sections. So good. The North Carolina one was elegant. It was a lot of greenery, which both states have a lot of greenery, but I think the Appalachian Mountains, and I can very much see it in my head. I see like the fog over the hills with the evergreen trees, all of that. I do think the atmosphere was good, but the Florida one definitely flourished more than the North Carolina one. As for writing, the writing itself, it was pretty good, but this is Thea looking back at her life telling this story. So the flashbacks, just the way they were immersed in the story, would take me out of the story, like so many of these books we've talked about have. And I just think it could have been edited better, it could have been formatted better to do breaks. Y'all know when they have breaks in pages like that. I wish that would have been breaking up the flashbacks rather than just going to the next paragraph, because I'd be like, wait, what? And then I'd read that flashback and be like, okay, what was happening in the present? And then there would be instances where she'd mention World War II, which obviously doesn't take place for another 15 years. And I was like, wait, what? So it was kind of confusing, and I think it could have been formatted better. As for plot, this was very much fine. I was really intrigued to find out why Thea was sent to this camp. So again, the Florida plotline had more intrigue to it. And then the North Carolina plotline, I was just like, cool, we're at this camp, and it's kind of gross, everything that's happening. There's a lot of taboo stuff in this book, so definitely do look up the trigger warnings before picking it up. We have Echo by Thomas Ode Havolt. I'm probably saying that wrong. This is a horror, and honestly, I don't remember a lot. This book was just so confusing. The characters, I didn't get a grasp on any of these characters, so I can't say they were great or anything. They did nothing for me. The atmosphere was great, though. It was very eerie. It reminded me of Joe Hill for Nosferatu. Is that how you say that? The one with the license plate number. Very much reminiscent of that. And of Shelley, because we're in the Swiss Alps. The atmosphere was great. It was so creepy, and that's what you want from a horror. But again, the writing, the formatting, can never tell what happened first. I couldn't tell the order of things in this book. It was just a bit all over the place. I could never understand why everything was happening that was happening. And I honestly don't remember that much and was very confused, but I do think this would read better as an audiobook than reading it physically. Like with the nonfiction, I am trying to add more graphic novels to my TBR. I read Alison by Lizzie Stewart. This is about an artist, and that is something I loved. I loved how this is about an artist, and it's a graphic novel, and it's pretty much done in watercolors, and I just thought it was so creative to make art about an artist. Just so clever. And I love the character of Alison, and I think she's somebody that everybody can relate to, coming of age, finding yourself, and how your relationships, not just romantic relationships, but build who you are as a person, and how they are stepping stones in a way. And I think everybody can relate to Alison's character journey. And as for the atmosphere, this takes place in London in the 70s and 80s and all the way up to current day pretty much. I didn't know a lot about the London bohemian art scene, so it really opened a lot of doors for me there. Another Leo book that I read this month was The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, and man, did I tab this up. I did the audiobook for this one, and I give this one a 3-star. The characters, you could never read any of them. And as I said before, I'm fine with unlikable characters, but these just were not developed enough for me to like them. Everybody who lived in the apartment complex thing, it's very different than an American apartment. I liked Nick, and I thought Sophie's backstory was intriguing and I wanted more there, but then the characters who were supposed to be like the victims, I think were bad people. And they did, our main character Jess, she did kind of become more developed at the end. Like, she took responsibility for her actions and was self-aware, but still that couldn't make me like her. Victim characters were not likable. The criminals, I guess, were the antagonists, were more likable, but still I didn't love anybody in this. The atmosphere, it was fine. It's supposed to be gothic. I didn't get gothic vibes at all. The writing, it was pretty dry. It was pretty flat. There were some bits where you could see that the author tried to make the writing descriptive, and I was just like, no, we're already this far in. You don't need to be trying that at this point. And the plot, I was super curious where this was going to go, but this is probably the most predictable thriller I've ever read in my life. Songs in Ursa Major by Emma Brody. This is another one that is rather forgettable. The character, our main character, was pretty much a Mary Sue. What even was her name? We had Jessie Reed, and who was the girl? Jane Quinn. Yes, very much a Mary Sue. She was very, everybody pretty much saw her as a hero around her, and I was like, why? The atmosphere was pretty cool though, and there were some witchy elements, as every book in Massachusetts has to have, and I was really intrigued and curious of the backstory of this character's family, but I know that this book wasn't going to give us that, but I wish that it had, because I was really intrigued by that. I thought the author could make a whole series about that. Very Alice Hoffman style. The setting was pretty cool. The writing, I did skim. I honestly don't remember much of the writing except that I skimmed. And then the plot, this was so much like Daisy Jones. If you've read Daisy Jones, you don't need to read this. It's pretty much the exact same, like star-crossed lovers, but we can't be together and all of that nonsense. Now we have a 5-star prediction that lived up to the expectation, and that is Demon Copperhead. Look how many pages I dog-eared. Look at the tabs. Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I love this book so much. It is the best book I've read this year. I know I've said that in like May's wrap up about some books, but this is really it. This really lived up to that. It left me feeling gut-wrenched. The character work here is amazing because there are so many people who are in this situation. I can think of a handful of people in my own life who I think could definitely relate to this, or stories I've heard of people who this is just, the story is real life for so many people in rural areas in America. Appalachia in this book was a character in itself. Oh my gosh, this is one of the books that has made me feel so at home. I'm not from Appalachia, but I am from a rural area in the South that is very much impoverished, and definitely this felt like at home. The writing was great. It wasn't the typical like poetic style that I like, but the dialect was spot on, and the writing was just so perfect for the story that was being told. We have Demon looking back at his life, much like in one of those books, the Writing Camp one. We have a character looking back at their life, but here it was done properly. And this is a retelling of David Copperfield. I have not read David Copperfield and still loved it, so you don't have to read that to enjoy this. In the plot, there's just so much here about how the world has effed up Appalachia, that Hollywood, Big Pharma, the coal mining companies, how they screwed over this place. And it's honestly disgusting how they haven't really been taken account for doing that. Like, it just happened. It was so eye-opening though on what life is like in Appalachia, and it just has inspired me to pick up so many other books. In that book, it left me with straight up despair. Like, I felt depressed after reading certain bits, and when a book can do that, that means it's a powerful one. Back to the first book that I finished this month. That is the Lindbergh Nanny by Mariah Fredericks. This is a mystery, which y'all know is not my main genre. I think there needed to be more building on the characters' relationships. I think the character building on the characters as singular people was good, but I wish there would have been done more with the relationships, because the nanny in this has such a connection with the child that she's taking care of, but I could not really feel it. They just said it, but they were telling us but not showing us. The atmosphere was great though. This is a cozy mystery in my mind. I don't know if it's because the like northeast setting and the historical setting, but it just felt so cozy. And the writing, again, this was another one that I had to skim. It was just too much and tiresome. And then the plot, I did learn a lot about the missing Lindbergh baby, and yeah, so I don't remember that much from that one. There was a lot of average. This was a very average reading month. I think my average rating has been a 3.25, but there have been some books like Demon Copperhead that I absolutely loved, so there have been some diamonds in the rough. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you made it all the way through, leave a red emoji in the comments below, and as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that notification bell to be notified when all my videos go live. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hey guys, recently I was invited to the Darlington County Humane Society in Darlington, South Carolina. This is Sherman, one of the dogs I got to meet. There are plenty of dogs there, and he is one of them. There are cats as well who are looking for homes. This is a shelter that is at over capacity in rural South Carolina, so a lot of these animals are very, very urgent. So I would highly recommend you guys looking at helping, adopting, fostering, volunteering, or donating. I will leave a link to their website down below, because these animals, they deserve so much, and I would just like for them to find homes and just to get help, because my animals mean so much to me, and to know they were in situations like this before, and those animals bring me so much joy, and I know that these animals can as well. So I would really, really like for you guys to help these animals. As I said, you can adopt, volunteer, or donate, foster, whatever works best for you. Even just sharing some of their posts on social media would be awesome. I hope you guys feel moved to help. Thank you.